On September 26, 1986, Konami released a game called Akumajo Dracula. It was the 10th game they had released for Nintendo's Famicom, but this was a first in a few ways as well. It was the first game Konami made for the Famicom Disk System, a floppy disk-based add-on for the Famicom. It was also the first game they made that was not a port or based off of an existing media franchise. Akumajo Dracula was a homegrown original game for the Famicom, if you ignore the MSX computer release that came out a month later. Akumajo Dracula, known in English as Castlevania, went on to be a hit and spawned a media franchise spanning dozens of games, several slot machines, an animated series on Netflix, a live symphony in Stockholm, Sweden, and characters like Simon Belmont have appeared in numerous crossovers like Super Smash Bros. And Captain N the Game Master.
How do I look? Is my hair all right?
Simon, they're not honoring you for Hairstyle of the Year. It's for being a hero like your great-grandfather.
I just want to look my handsomest.
Glorious. But today we're not talking about any of that. We're just talking about the classic Famicom games, the original Famicom trilogy. But is it really just a trilogy? Perhaps there is a game that's missing from this illustrious set, a game that should be talked about more often when discussing the Famicom games. And this game is not Kid Dracula. While Kid Dracula is certainly underrated, it is by no means forgotten when it comes to the series. I mean, it was in the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, so most people who like Castlevania probably know what it is. No, the game I'm actually talking about is Getsu Fumaden. Now you're probably saying, Sebastian, I don't see the words Akuma, Joe, or Dracula anywhere in that title. Now that may be true, but my reasons for calling this a Castlevania game are not unfounded. In both games you play as warriors with flowing manes who use a special weapon and sub-weapons to kill monsters and dispatch of an evil ruler. But before we go any further, I should probably give some more context around this game. Getsu Fumaden was released on July 7, 1987, around 2 months before Castlevania 2 came out, and was Konami's 22nd game to release for the Famicom. Before it came out, the game was featured in Biweekly Famitsu number 13 on June 26, 1987. In the magazine it scored favorably, but it still lands at number 6 of 7 with a score of 29 out of 40. So, is Castlevania 1.5 really that mediocre? Is it really worse than Exciting Billiards? To answer this question, we're going to have to take a closer look into what this game is. To do this, I'll be breaking down this game, and the first chunk I'm going to look at is the story, in which the demon lord Ryukotsuki escapes from hell to rule the surface world. To do this, however, he must defeat the 3 Getsu brothers, who already rule over the surface. The brothers each wield a pulse blade, and they are immensely powerful. Still, Ryukotsuki manages to kill the 2 oldest Getsu brothers and steal the pulse blades before retreating to Mad Demon Island. Fuma, the only surviving Getsu brother, travels to Mad Demon Island to recover the pulse blades and destroy Ryukotsuki and his minions once and for all. A pretty simple game story overall, but still it's better than Kill Dracula, Kill Dracula again, and Kill Dracula but with the help of a thief, a hot witch, and Dracula's even hotter son. Getsu Fumaden's gameplay is an interesting thing to talk about, as it has 3 distinct gameplay styles. The first is an overhead view, which is used for the world map. On the map, you just walk on squares, which send you to the main style of gameplay, 2D side-scrolling platforming. In this regard, it's similar to Zelda 2, which also has an overhead world map and side-scrolling main stages. The side-scrolling stages are the ones that play most like Castlevania, but it has some differences. The most striking is that instead of a whip, Fuma wields a sword, which changes the game more than you think. Sword has a shorter slash range than Simon's whip, but it sort of makes up for this by having your sword swing in an arc in front of you, which lets you hit enemies that are falling into you or are in different elevations without having to jump. This is nice, but I still prefer the whip. One thing in this game that I do like more than Castlevania is the sword bar here. It fills up throughout the game, and the more it fills up, the stronger your sword will hit. It's fun to go back to early stages and kill enemies in one hit that would have taken you 3 hits when the game started. Just like in Castlevania, you collect different sub-weapons throughout the game. Some of them are purely defensive, like Cursed Clothing, Defensive Balls, and the Amulet. Others are additions to your combat abilities, like the War Drum, the Shurikens, the Hexplosives, and the Devil's Top. Other sub-items are only used in the third style of gameplay, third-person dungeon crawling. It's not as bad as you would think, but it's still pretty bunk. Fortunately, there are only 3 dungeons in the game, so you don't have to worry about it too much. But if you want to beat the game, you will need to beat all 3 dungeons, as that's where you acquire the Pulse Blades. Eventually, you obtain the Pulse Blades and complete your transformation into Nurgle, God of Destruction and War. Then you kick Ryokotsuki's teeth in with the Pulse Blades, and you finally completed your Grand Epic Odyssey with enough time in the day to have a nice cup of tea. Overall, it's a solid experience, but is it better than exciting billiards? Jury's still out on that one, so let's look at the legacy this game has. Fuma has appeared in quite a few Konami crossovers. He is a playable character in both Konami YY World games, but King Kong and Mikey from the Goonies are also playable characters in those games, so getting into them is not much of an achievement. Remixes of Getsu Fumaden music are featured in the classic game Poppin' Music 18 Sengoku Retsuden. Yeah, I've never heard of it either. In Japan, there is a game called Monster Retsuden Oreka Battle, which is an arcade trading card game. I don't know how that works either, but Fuma makes an appearance as a character in the game, though he is just an edit of a ninja named Zero. Speaking of trading card games, both Fuma and Ryokotsuki appear as cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Ryokotsuki's card is even featured in the anime, though he isn't summoned. Gradius. It's a horizontal shooter made by Konami, and it has spawned 2 parody series. The first is the fairly well-known Parodius, but the second one is the rather obscure Otomedius. Like the main series, Otomedius is a horizontal shooter, but instead of regular spaceships, they have special crafts based off of characters from previous Konami games. This all sounds neat, but the one caveat is that all of the characters are anime girls. Yay, Japan. Anyway, one of the main characters in the third game, Otomedius X, is Geshi Hanafuma, who is the Otomedius version of Fuma, to the point where the ship she rides on in the game is literally called the Pulse Blade. The even more striking Getsu Fumaden reference is that in the game, Ryokotsuki is one of the game's bosses. I mean, it doesn't look like him, or her now I guess, but it's still supposed to be him. Her. Whatever. A DLC pack for Castlevania Harmony of Despair is Getsu Fumaden based and even lets you play as Fuma through a Getsu Fumaden-like stage. And that's it. All of it. Despite its legacy and importance to Konami's early days, Getsu Fumaden has mostly fallen into obscurity, a game that was not remembered. The forgotten Castlevania game. That is until this happened. That's right, almost 35 years later, Getsu Fumaden is getting another shot at life with a sequel called Getsu Fumaden Undying Moon, a game I'll definitely be playing through sometime down the road. So after all that, if you're in the mood to play this hidden gem for yourself, what are your options? Well, you could always buy the original Famicom release if you're a nerd who has a Famicom, like me. The game is also available on both 3DS and Wii U Virtual Console, so you can play it like that. You can go and pre-order Getsu Fumaden Undying Moon and get a free copy of the game as a bonus. The last option is to just emulate, which is what I did. If you get your hands on this game, I recommend the GameFAQs guide to help you along. Seriously, it's the only way I could have beaten this game. Link in the description. And that's really it. The legacy of Getsu Fumaden, the hopefully soon-to-be unforgotten Castlevania game. Okay, normally I would give you some lame excuse for why I can't keep my promises video to video, but instead I think I'll just be making a 100 subscriber special where I talk about everything that's going on right now, and why I'm the laziest person who's ever lived. Anyways, thank you for watching to the end, and if you liked it, leave a like and consider subscribing. If not, then our path ends here. Bye.